Welcome to another Locked On Podcast Network crossover episode. We've got 49ers at Bengals in Week 14. The 6-6 Niners traveling to Cincy to face the 7-5 Bengals. Brian Peacock here and Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers with Jake Liscow and James Rapien of Locked On Bengals. This is a fascinating game for me, guys. And James, Jake, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I really feel a similar vibe this season with where the 49ers are at, where the Bengals are at. We'll make our predictions a little bit later on in this show, but I feel like these two teams can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody. And I feel like the AFC, even more than the NFC, there's just parity has reigned so far in 2021. So I don't really know what the hell to think about this. Maybe you guys can help us out.
I think it's really challenging. And the other thing that I think is going to play a part in this, and we'll talk about it, it seems like Kyle Shanahan kills the Bengals. With the 49ers, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but you go back to Zach Taylor's first home game in Cincinnati as a coach of the Bengals, and it was that blowout in 2019. So, we'll see how that goes. Just historically, there's a lot of trauma for Bengals fans around the 49ers and those Super Bowls way back when. So there's a lot going on, and playoff stakes, all this stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, I can't wait to see how it turns out. It could go any number of directions. I think the Las Vegas bettors feel the same there. The line is Cincinnati favored by 1, which is a little bit on the fence there. Neutral site, that means usually, 3 points. The Niners might be favored 2 at a neutral site. So we'll see how you guys feel about that at the end of this show. One of the big things going on with the 49ers right now is who's not playing, and it is the guy they traded up for in the draft, number 3 overall, Trey Lance. Mm-hmm. For 49ers fans out there, can you rewind to when Joe Burrow was the number 1 overall pick in the draft and what that was like? Was it like, okay, how early should he play? When's he going to play? Is it just a no-brainer that he's got to play as a rookie? Because right now it's looking more and more like we might not see Trey Lance if Jimmy Garoppolo stays healthy for the entirety of the rest of his rookie season.
Oh, it was absolutely Joe Burrow's playing. What's going to happen to Andy Dalton? Do they trade Andy Dalton? Do they, ship him away? And a few days later, they ended up just releasing him, and he ended up in Dallas. But yeah, it was no brainer. Joe Burrow's going to start right away. He's the future of the franchise, and there's good to that certainly, and there's bad to that. And the good was I think Burrow was ready to lead the Bengals to a winning record last year. The bad is the Bengals weren't ready to have a winning record last year, and that's why we saw them with the record they had before he got injured. But there was no doubt when he got drafted that they were going to play him right away, even though they did have, and I think Jimmy Garoppolo right now better than what Andy Dalton was last year, during the draft. But even though they did have an established quarterback on the roster, there was no denying that Joe Burrow was going to be QB1.
Do you guys think
the
that's
49ers?
True? Well, Jimmy Garoppolo now better than Andy Dalton then? You guys like Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco?
It depends on the day, and it depends on who you ask. I think you really have a good idea of who Jimmy Garoppolo is now. But yeah, I would put Jimmy G 2021 ahead of 2020 Andy Dalton. I think that's fair. And I think the expectations of the team to win with the veteran quarterback is maybe a different dynamic. But I find it interesting because that was the Crocky plan, right? And that's kind of what we had talked about. I was like, well, what are we doing with Jimmy G then? You went up to get this quarterback. Let's play this quarterback, right? Because you already know you want to replace Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think if Croc and I were both in charge, correct me if I'm wrong, Croc, we would have gone with the same plan that the Bengals went with the year before.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, and 100%, we would have let Jimmy go, traded him, whatever it was. Let's go with the young guy, and he's going to take his lumps, right? I think the difference is Kyle Shanahan is under a different microscope. He's a guy who has 1 winning season in 4 years, but has all these expectations. So I think it was a lot tougher for him to just say, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off and go with this rookie who, not just a rookie, played at the FCS level, only played 1 year, hadn't played in a year. I'm going to go with him to lead us and potentially have 1 winning season in 5 years. I think that just sounds so terrible for a coach with such high expectations. So I think for Kyle, he had to keep Jimmy Garoppolo around and really had to kind of stick with that plan. And as we see right now, he's not really deterring away from it.
What's the feeling in San Francisco around Kyle Shanahan then? Because it's interesting to compare these coaching staffs. I think Kyle Shanahan, people all the time I see on Twitter are like, why is Kyle Shanahan get slack? He doesn't win. Why is he seen as this faultless wonderkind? Where Zach Taylor, on the other hand, everybody, all the Bengals fans are like, not all, many Bengals fans are ready to fire him last year. James Rapien, some of the beat writers ready to say, let him go, move on, find another coach. Don't make the same mistakes you used to make, Bengals, where you keep the coach the extra year. Now a lot of forgiveness and a lot of I don't know about backtreading, but you know what I mean. Like Zach Taylor has a lot more rope now. What's the feeling with Shanahan? Is he on a hot seat? Was he on a hot seat, or does he still have some leash out there?
There was never a hot seat, but there definitely was more scrutiny this year than there had been in previous years. He just signed a 6-year contract extension when he was only 3 years into his previous contract. So, I mean, just financially, like that, looking at it from a financial standpoint, they can't let him go and they can't do anything. And he has there's no offset clause in his contract. So even if you were to let him go, typically you could fire a coach. And if they get picked up by another team, then, you're not on the hook for that money. Not the case for Kyle Shanahan. You're on the hook for all of that. So never on the hot seat, but definitely the scrutiny. And I believe it was warranted when you look at the situation, the lack of wins throughout his tenure as a 49er. You can justify a lot of things, but just a lot of the moves that he either made or didn't make and why the 49ers were in the position that they're in. And then to go through all that and start 2-4 and had a 4-game losing streak in the midst of all that just wasn't ideal. Even now, we're talking about a team that's 6-6, and I believe most of the losses have happened because of just a lot of undisciplined play. Well, who does that fall on? I believe that falls on the coaching staff. Now, guys have been kind of, making other people the scapegoat, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, whether it's Coach Hightower, who's the special teams coordinator, right? They've gone to him even more so than Kyle Shanahan. So he's still kind of getting a pass somewhat, but definitely not on the hot seat.
And I will say our last podcast was titled, Did the 49ers Get Outcoached? So there is some scrutiny happening with Kyle Shanahan. It's not so much of a hot seat thing. It's just like, okay, Kyle, we know you're your offensive genius, play designer and all of that, but big picture stuff, what's going on here? Do you need some help there? Do you need some game management help in the fourth quarter, end of game situations with clock management? Do you need somebody else like that's a assistant head coach that's been around a really long time to bounce ideas off of, that's not related to you, that's not your dad, because his dad is a wealth of knowledge, I'm sure, that's a phone call away, but someone else in the building, maybe somebody that he's not related to, somebody else that maybe he's never even coached with before, that's well thought of and well respected around the league, that has different ideas than he does because he's got so much control in the organization and maybe he's got just too much on his plate. So that's where I would look to maybe more delegation for Kyle Shanahan, but I don't think it's a hot seat situation. It doesn't get warm until next year. If Trey Lance turns out not to be the guy, then I think both John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan both get on the hot seat because they went all in on this rookie quarterback, and it seems like they're still not ready to go with him yet.
I think the weirder thing through all this is that he's kind of the big dog, right? He's looked at as the big brother and has this tree of coaches, whether it's Zach Taylor, Sean McVay, LaFleur, and they are all having more success than him. And that's the interesting part. So with guys that came up under him and were his quality control guys or his passing quarterback coach or his tight end coach and Sean McVay, all these guys that worked under him, what are they doing different? They learned from him, but somehow they've been able to have more success for whatever reason. Now, LaFleur, that's the easy one. Okay, you got Aaron Rodgers. But Zach Taylor, I mean, he started from the bottom with the Bengals. And even he's been able to get more out of a Bengals team. Well, I think if you just look at the rosters on paper, you would probably say the 49ers are more talented than.
Yeah, it's probably close, but I agree with you. I think they certainly had higher expectations. The other part about it for Taylor, he's not out of the woods. 625-1 coming into this year. I get it. They start 7-4, and I think it's realistic to think that they could, especially with all the injuries, and we'll dive into it, lose to the 49ers. If they fall to 7-6 and potentially don't make the playoffs and finish 8-9 or 9-8, even in that range, are we sure he's the guy? I still think it's a question mark going into year 4. I'm not saying he's going to get fired by any stretch, but I still think he's got something to prove if he can't get them to the playoffs after the start that they got off to.
All right, we've got more questions for you guys about those Cincinnati Bengals. I know you have more questions for us about the San Francisco 49ers in advance of this Week 14 matchup, but I want to let the listeners know about StatHero. No one plays daily fantasy sports to lose. Winning feels so much better, but traditional fantasy sports are a long-term losing proposition because you never know who or what you're up against. And I've been playing a lot of fantasy sports for a long time. I used to write fantasy blurbs that you probably have read at some point over the course of the last 10 years. And I'm getting destroyed in year-long fantasy football this season because you lose Derrick Henrys of the world and you have bad matchups here or there, or players get hurt and you're done. Your whole season's done. So how about StatHero, the first of its kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in head-to-head fantasy matchups, winner take all. And here's the crazy part. StatHero shows you their lineups before you play, and you handpick the team you want to face one-on-one. Never before seen innovation of a fantasy sports and fantasy betting hybrid has StatHero players clocking odds that are over 4 times better. Why? Because you don't have to compete against thousands of experts or unknowns. StatHero puts you in control of your fate. You just choose a couple of running backs to beat StatHero's couple of running backs that they're challenging you to beat. It's super simple, super easy. The odds are in your favor and a heck of a lot of fun with StatHero. You are in control of the stakes. StatHero head-to-head is what daily fantasy should be one-on-one. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/locked-on. Use promo code locked on for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/locked-on and use that promo code locked on for a 100% deposit match. stathero.com/locked-on. Fellas, my main question here, this is the thing that worries me the most about this matchup for the 49ers in Cincinnati, is the weapons on the outside, the young pass catchers. I've seen T. Higgins moss people multiple weeks. He's got such good ball skills down the field and his length. And then Jamar Chase is a freak of nature athlete. You know, some drops preseason. Looked like he cleaned that up. One of the worst drops I saw all season. Actually, one was Gerald Everett against the Niners last week, and one was Jamar Chase. Both ended in interceptions, which can't happen. And it's almost as if T. Higgins, correct me if I'm wrong, is taken back over that number one wide receiver spot from Jamar Chase. Or maybe it's a matchup thing or whatever. But those two guys scare the bejesus out of me if I'm a 49ers fan, because the Niners are banged up in the secondary, and you're probably looking at Dante Johnson and Josh Norman, and Josh Norman was never fast to begin with, and he'll be grabbing one of those dudes, whoever he's covering there, so you hope he doesn't get flagged a lot. That's the matchup that worries me. Talk to me about, and maybe call, like, should we be worried about that? Maybe the 49ers fans that are listening to this show, should they be worried, or is it not that big of a problem for opposing defenses to cover those two guys?
I think it's a problem. I think that's fair to say, especially if you're banged up in the secondary. Kind of the way the Bengals have approached this and Joe Burrow has approached this is he's going to find a corner that he thinks he can pick on, and he's going to keep throwing at the guy for the whole game. You go the last couple of weeks in particular that they've had banged up secondaries that they've gone against. Against Pittsburgh, it was James Pierre playing for Joe Hayden, and 42 couldn't do anything the whole game with T. Higgins. And you're seeing a lot of defenses cloud Jamar Chase at this point. And I think that's causing some hesitation with Joe Burrow at times. A strip sack, the very first drive against the Chargers last week, where he injures his pinky. Jamar Chase is running free on a go route, gets an inside release though, and the safety's kind of late to get over there. Maybe Burrow's expecting cloud. Maybe he can't decide where to go with the ball, but I kind of wonder if the tendencies have caused Burrow to hesitate a little bit going to Chase. Obviously, later in the game, he drops one in the bucket that Chase coughs up. So, are the drops something that are going to be a consistent issue for Jamar Chase? I don't think so. I think he's too good. It wasn't an issue at LSU. It's not like he has, small hands or things that we actually have evidence, that this is a physical issue. It seems like a mental concentration thing from him. That drop against the Chargers last week is the first time I've seen him do it on a vertical ball. And so what the Bengals are probably going to do with these guys, and don't forget about Tyler Boyd in the slot, of course. I know the 49ers a little bit more stout up the middle than a lot of teams, but they're going to find the matchups they like, and they're going to try to pick on them. And the one thing that Joe Burrow's been really good about is making that pre-snap, post-snap read, identifying the changes in coverage, and he's not getting tricked. So if you try to trick him by rolling coverage one way or the other to try to bait him into a throw, he's generally been pretty good at that and avoiding those tricks, except for in this one situation when he turns his back to the line of scrimmage and play action. So that's the one place you might get him. You might get some sacks. You might get a pick. He's been kind of rough in those areas, but that's my idea of where the Bengals would like to attack the 49ers with the passing offense.
It must be nice to have a quarterback that can pick on a
is.
cornerback.
Yeah.
I knew Croc was going to say that. I could see the look in his face because we've talked about that. Kyle Shanahan is a play caller, and Jimmy Garoppolo, they don't really do that. Find the weakness. They want to use your rules as an entire defense against you. That's kind of Kyle Shanahan's play calling style. He's not so much a let's find the weakness and go attack that. And Croc and I have talked about that, and I could just see the look on his face when you mentioned that Joe Burrow likes to go after the weakness of an opposing defense, because I think it's genius. It's the thing to do in this day and age in the NFL. You have an advantage. Go utilize it.
Very opposite approaches. I think a lot of Bengals fans are asking for more of what Kyle Shanahan does, and is like scheme a guy open instead of, hey, call a play and let Joe Burrow make the decision and find the weak spot to attack. And when you have a quarterback like Burrow, there's merits to both, I think.
Jonah Williams, Riley Reif, those are the starting offensive tackles in week 14, correct? How do you think they're going to block up Nick Bosa? Because if the 49ers are going to help out their defensive backs, it's all about getting to the quarterbacks, getting to Joe Burrow, putting pressure on him, and that starts and a lot of times ends with Nick Bosa on this 49ers defensive line.
Jonah Williams, certainly someone that you want in that situation of all the linemen. Riley Reif's coming off of an ankle injury. He didn't play against the Chargers, did practice on Wednesday. I think he's going to play on Sunday, and they almost held him out just for precautionary reasons more than anything, and they might be kicking themselves that they didn't play him. So, yeah, I expect him to play this week. And, yeah, it's been, for the most part this year, especially offensive line-wise, the strength of the offensive line was how consistent that, their tackles have been, and they're comfortable at times putting them on an island. Against a guy like Bosa, they'll probably give him some help. Both guys, depending on the situation, and game script's obviously going to matter a lot. They're going to try to avoid 3rd and 14, et cetera. But I think they're confident in those guys' ability to hold up enough against a guy like Bosa. They faced Myles Garrett. They faced the other Bosa last week. And it's been, I don't know about you, Jake. It feels like they're facing a great pass rusher every single week. And maybe it's just because there's a great pass rusher on every team. But it's wild to think about. It's been a big topic on our show each and every week, the pass rushers on the other team.
It does feel like every week, whether it's a interior defensive lineman or an edge rusher. When you face Myles Garrett twice a year, you have TJ Watt on the schedule twice a year.
That's true.
And the NFC North on the schedule this year, so there's a few guys in that division. It's just the way the schedule works out. You got both Bosas this year. I mean, talk about a string of pass rushers.
Yeah, that's tough getting 2 Bosas and not being in one of those divisions either. So, how about, okay, I got some questions about the defensive side of the ball, actually. And Trey Hendrickson has been awesome. And I wasn't sure in the offseason, Carl Lawson, I've been a big fan of ever since college. And he's one of my favorites coming out of Auburn. But letting him walk and signing Trey Hendrickson turns out to be a fantastic move for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's lining up mostly on the right side, because what probably the thing that worries me next most after those 2 young receivers going against the Niners secondary is Tom Compton at right tackle. I think 5th rounder Jalen Moore should be starting at right tackle personally, but it'll probably be Tom Compton, and he's just getting beat like a drum. Is Hendrickson moving around? Is he only on the right side? Is he going to see some action on the left side? And if not, who's Compton going to be getting beat by on Sunday?
Hendrickson is going to be exclusively, unless they diverge from their plans previously this year, he's going to be getting beat like a drum by the best left tackle in football. I mean, talk about things that scare me in this matchup, and I'm sure we'll talk about them. Trent Williams is number 1 through, 3 on the list. And maybe, George Kittle is in that conversation too. Those 2 guys terrify me. But Hendrickson has been an exclusively right side guy this year. He's been a great pass rusher. I don't think he's been great against the run, quite frankly. And this is what's concerning about this matchup. No matter which running back Kyle Shanahan employs, seems like he finds success against the Bengals, and his school of running finds success against the Bengals. And when you got Laken Tomlinson beside Trent Williams on the left side there, that's pretty scary. And I think the Bengals will probably go 5-2. They're very injured at linebacker as well. and they're just going to put extra defensive linemen on the field and try to control things that way. But for Tom Compton, it's going to be Sam Hubbard on the other side. And Hubbard is a great run defender to his credit and probably an average pass rusher, I would say. So that'll be interesting. And I'm excited to see DJ Reader and how who they went out and got in free agency last year, still one of the best nose tackles in football, criminally underrated, one of the best interior defensive linemen, period, in the NFL, in my opinion. Excited to see him and if he can make a difference against a potent running team. They faced the Browns, obviously, earlier this year. Didn't go so well. And that's one of the reasons they went out and got DJ Reader. Of course, it takes more than a nose tackle to stop a run game, especially one that likes to stress the edges, as I imagine we'll see with Shanahan and the 49ers this week. But I'm sure we'll have time to talk about that in a few minutes.
Yeah, that seems unideal. Even if it's not the normal game plan, I would put Hendrickson on the left side, and I would put Hubbard, if he's the better run defender, on the right side up against Trent Williams, since you're not going to win many pass rush reps there anyway. But I don't know. That's just me. I'm not getting paid the big bucks to make those kinds of decisions. More questions for each other. I want to turn it over to you guys before we run out of time and make some quick predictions on this Week 14 contest next. But I want to let the listeners know about a very special offer from On Location. And it's never too early to start thinking about the Super Bowl, especially when it's all going down so close to home for us in California. From San Francisco, quick little shot down the highway to LA. Noted traffic in both cities, but that's okay. Once you're in between, you can be moving pretty quickly. A little bit longer of a trip for those of you in Ohio. Super Bowl 56 at SoFi is less than 100 days away. And On Location, the official hospitality partner of the NFL, is the only place where to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Who knows? Could be Niners Bengals in Super Bowl 56 in LA. Select your exact seats and choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with NFL legends, 5-star LA hotels, and food chefed up by the great Wolfgang Puck. Visit onlocationexp.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. That's onlocationexp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl On Location. I have a Super Bowl feeling about this season. Let's get there with On Location.
Maybe you do think it's going to be Bengals 49ers Super Bowl matchup round 3 at SoFi. And if so, you can bet on that and you can win some money while you do it at betonline.ag. They have you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues in the postseason, less than 6 weeks away. So check out their new updated desktop, or like I do, use your mobile device, and it's really easy to use. And while you're there and you sign up and maybe you want to bet on, Joe Burrow being comeback player of the year, or maybe you want to bet on the 49ers coming back and not only making the playoffs, but making a Super Bowl run. You can do all of that and more at betonline.ag. And right now, you're going to get a 50% welcome bonus when you sign up with promo code Locked On. It's that simple. betonline.ag, promo code Locked On. Get free money that you can use to bet on Steph Curry and the Warriors, Bengals 49ers, and anything and everything in between. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
They've
Well,
got
guys,
you got me thinking about Steph Curry. He's going to break the all-time threes record. I think they've got 100-1 odds right now at BetOnline for if he breaks the record with 16 threes tonight. I don't know if anybody will have watched it. Is the game? I think it's tonight's game. Yeah,
it is tonight. It is tonight. It's funny.
I don't know.
I didn't mention Steph because we're on with you guys, by the way. I love Steph, and so ask Jake. I mention him all the time in those BetOnline reads.
That's fantastic. And the other thing, this is comeback player of the year bowl. Bosa versus Burrow, right? If Bosa and Burrow, I think they're the leading candidates for comeback player of the year. If Bosa does his job, it makes it harder for Burrow. Does that put him on top?
Look,
if Niners can't get home, does Burrow go deep on the Niners defense and solidify his comeback player of the year?
I know you guys cover the 49ers, but the Dallas Cowboys have a quarterback who is by far the favorite for comeback player of the year. I'm just saying. I know y'all don't like the Cowboys in San Francisco. I know there's some history there, but Dak does exist.
Nah, he's
unfortunately for all of our listeners, I think, because they're all like, well, dang it, our favorite player should be comeback player of the year.
Sorry, I'm just here to rain on your parade.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, hopefully, well, depending on who you're thinking there. Anyways, let's dive into the San Francisco side of things. We've talked about Burrow a little bit. Let's talk about Jimmy G, because I feel it. I sense it. That there are people that didn't want Jimmy Garoppolo to start this year. How has he played overall, and specifically over the past few weeks as the 49ers try to make their playoff push?
I think he has done well. He has been a guy that they've kind of coddled with like kitty gloves. They kind of handle him with kitty gloves where they want to lean more on the run game. Most people would tell you that the 49ers have to run the ball 40 times to win. That's kind of like the magic number, and that's what's going to help Jimmy Garoppolo out and make it to where he's not doing things to turn the ball over. Jimmy still can have these games where he does do very well, but the more he throws, the more likely something bad is going to happen. And that we have a 49er beat writer. His name is Grant Cohn. He covers the 49ers, and he put out some numbers. And when Jimmy Garoppolo throws the ball more than 30 times, his record is not good. When he throws it less than 30 times, his record is like excellent. So they want to really lean on the game and not throw as much. I think most people know who he is, so I don't get as upset with Jimmy Garoppolo when something weird happens, but definitely plays well enough more times than not to be able to win a game.
I want to talk a little bit more about Jimmy G, but before I do, my question, I alluded to this when we were talking about the Bengals defensive line. George Kittle is the second most scary thing for me right now, with Deebo Samuel looking kind of doubtful this week. Would you say that Jimmy Garoppolo will target his wide receivers collectively more times, less times, or the same amount of times as George Kittle? If you were game planning and thinking about where you would want the ball to go for the 49ers offense.
I think last week was a huge revelation and probably reminded everybody, including Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo, that you got to get George Kittle more involved. I think he had one catch the week before, and whether Debo's playing or not, and I think it's at this point unlikely that Debo plays this week. I think it's smart to keep him out one more week if the 49ers do have playoff aspirations and want to keep him healthy. George Kittle has to be involved, and Brandon Ayuk has to be involved too. But Kittle is so good and so important to the passing game, not just as a run blocker, which has been mostly for the last few weeks this season. You got to get him involved in the passing game. I still think the ball goes to wide receivers probably more, and definitely more if Debo plays. But if no Debo, then I think you got to at least get double-digit targets to George Kittle, because he's too important. He's a heart and soul player of the offense. You got to get the ball in his hands and get that going. And that's where Jimmy G lives, in the middle of the field anyway. So, a couple big plays to Ayuk, feed the running game, and feed George Kittle heavily. And if Deebo Samuel is available and Deebo Samuel is playing, then feed him heavily as well, both as a runner and a receiver. But Kittle's got to be more involved. And I think that was clear as day last week.
James, can I jump in with the follow-up here real quick?
I'm going to do it. Go.
Yeah, I did it. So I saw a tweet today, a couple tweets I want to mention that I thought are kind of comical. One of them is like, imagine if George Kittle wasn't good at run blocking and they had to use him as a dynamic pass catching weapon he is. I thought that was kind of funny. Like, imagine, if the temptation wasn't there for him to maul guys in the run game. But the other thing was, Aaron Schatz from Football Outsiders tweeting that the Bengals are 29th in the NFL in passing DVOA for throws going to the middle of the field. Is it true that am I right in my thinking here that Kyle Shanahan wants to stress you horizontally in the run game and kind of in the middle of the field more in the passing game? Is that an accurate assumption?
That's Jimmy Garoppolo's strength. Where Jimmy Garoppolo is efficient and more accurate and more willing to throw, it's over the middle. And he has really good run after catch guys, especially when Deebo Samuel is in there. When you look at that, that heat chart thing that they with all the little dots, they're all inside the hashes. I mean, there might be one or two that might be outside, not the hash, the numbers. There might be one or two throws outside the numbers, but for the most part, 95% of his passes are inside the numbers, and another good amount are inside the hashes. He wants to throw over the middle. He wants to throw in timing with rhythm. And typically when he does that, we see the best version of Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, he also can get in trouble doing that. He threw 2 interceptions in that middle of the field last week. But I'd say more times than not, that's where he's most comfortable throwing the ball and can be really good at it.
Before we get to predictions, let's talk a little bit about this defense. We talked about Bosa. We talked about the secondary a little bit, but where are the strengths? Where should our Bengals fans be aware of? Because I know Warner practiced on Wednesday. I expect him back. So the 49ers getting healthier, I guess, in the front seven?
Yeah, definitely getting healthier in the front seven. The defensive line's been pretty good, especially lately against the run. The linebackers have stepped up in recent weeks. When Fred Warner was out, Azeez Al-Shaair, who was an undrafted free agent a couple years ago, has been really awesome. So that's a really good 1-2 punch for the 49ers. Whether or not Dre Greenlaw comes back or when he comes back, I don't think it's even a problem because of the way that Warner and Azeez Al-Shaair have been playing. So that's huge for the 49ers. I think they've been getting pretty good play from their safeties, which has helped out the guys on the outside. Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tartt both are pretty underrated players. And then when Tartt's been banged up, they've had their 5th round draft pick from USC, the rookie Talanoa Hufanga, who's been playing pretty well. And he's definitely a good box safety. I don't know about him when they try to go interchange and they put him at deep safety. That would be somewhere that Joe Burrow should probably attack if they try to do that. But yeah, good against the run. Against the pass, it's been all Bosa as a pass rusher, but they have had guys rotate in and out and make a few plays. Arden Key here and there, Eric Armstead here and there. DJ Jones had an awesome week as your one technique last week. He's been fantastic and really an unheralded player around the league. So I think front seven wise, they're in a pretty good place and even better place, especially against the run, if it's not Joe Mixon out there Sunday. And it's who am I going to pick up, by the way, guys? Am I picking up Samaje Perine? Is that what I'm looking at?
If Samaje Perine has to play and Joe Mixon is sick all week, that would be the one. I have one last defensive question. I know we're going a little bit long here.
Rupert, I wanted to touch on the defensive strengths real quick because I've been defending the secondary this whole time.
I was going to go
and
secondary.
There's some numbers that came out. Yeah, there's some numbers came out. So one, the 49ers are 5th against the pass in the league. Right now, I don't know about the DVOA numbers or whatnot, but passing yards, they're 5th in the league. And then like yards per attempt or yards per completion or whatever, they're top 10 at that. So the one thing the 49ers secondary has done a really good job of, and maybe it's the defensive line getting back there, but they've been really limiting the big plays. Where they have gotten hurt is they lead the league in pass interferences, and they have the most pass interference yards given up. So if you are a Bengals team that wants to take shots, there have been times when the 49ers secondary panic at the catch point and potentially, you can draw a penalty there. But overall, like on more of a consistent basis, I don't think they play as bad as most people think. They just have some weird moments, especially with guys like Josh Norman. He has some weird moments where he'll misjudge a ball in the air, completely whiff. The ball will still go out of bounds. He'll still celebrate. Like they have these really weird moments where you're like, you're not good. Why are you doing that? But overall, throughout an entire game, they don't get beat as many times as other defenses around the league.
My question was going to be with the Bengals, they're going to be in 11 personnel for a lot of the game. They might go heavy from time to time, especially if Joe Mixon gets back and try to run the ball a little bit. But what are the Bengals? What should the Bengals and Joe Burrow expect schematically from the secondary? Are they playing a lot of single high, a lot of two high, or what's the defensive philosophy in terms of coverage on the back half to deal with this trio of receivers?
Well, they played more too high. I think they play a little bit more man this year than maybe in years past. They have a terrific nickel in Kwan Williams, who, if you are a more 11 personnel run offense, it doesn't matter for him because he's really good against the run. He'll get out there, defeat blocks, get in there, make tackles. He's a smaller guy, but he's really scrappy at that point. I think where you can get him is if you have a guy like Tyler Boyd, and Tyler Boyd runs more like vertically pushing routes from the slot. That's kind of where you can get Kwan Williams in a bind. I don't know if his coverage downfield is as good, but as far as defending the run against an 11 personnel team, they have guys that run well sideline to sideline. Azeez Al-Shaair, he just had 16 tackles, tackle for loss, forced fumble, half a sack, and I was playing without Fred Warner. I'm assuming Fred Warner will probably be back this week. So I think with the 49ers team speed, especially at the next level, it kind of plays in their hands if you run more 11 personnel.
What are we looking at here, guys, for predictions in week 14? We've got Cincinnati favored by 1. The over-under is 48.5 points. I'm a little uneasy going in either direction. I just feel like there's so much unknown with these two teams and which direction the game can go. For me, some of it depends on the health of guys like Emmanuel Mosley and guys like Elijah Mitchell. If they're both healthy, I think it would be a lot easier for me to say, okay, Niners can, roll coverage one way, let Emmanuel Mosley play on T. Higgins or Jamar Chase and feel a little bit better about that. Run the ball on offense, play a game control game, play their kind of bully ball they want to play and come out of this one with a win on the road. But the fact that those two guys right now, if I had to guess, aren't going to play, that worries me a little bit more. So for me, I think whoever's getting points is what I would go with. And since you're getting 1 point with Cincinnati, the Niners favored by 1 point. Or no, sorry, the Niners getting 1 point, Cincinnati favored by 1. I'll take the Niners. But I think this is just going to be one that I wouldn't put my money on. I'm just going to kick up my feet and watch an NFC team play an AFC team and see if we can learn something about these guys and see which good team shows up. Croc, how do you see this one going for the Niners?
Can
Go
I
ahead.
jump in and correct you real quick? Because
Oh,
the
you too.
line has moved.
Oh, has it? Okay,
The
good.
49ers are now favored as of Wednesday night by 1.5. I think on the news that Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, et cetera, are not practicing on
Oh,
Wednesday.
you're right. I didn't refresh it. Okay, we got Niners favored by 1.5 now. That's very interesting. So give me the
I would
Bengals.
be, by the way, I would be shocked if the Joes didn't play.
Yeah,
Just
I
you
agree.
think
being
Mixon's
there
good?
today. Yeah, Mixon too. Yeah, they just, it's more of a precaution. They don't want his like cold to get to the other players and stuff. So
Yeah, and it's not
for
COVID
what it's
related
worth,
or anything like that.
it's
With the
not.
illness.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that worries me a little bit for the 49ers. More full strength, and you're getting that point and a half for the Bengals. So against the spread, give me the Bengals straight up. Give me the Niners. How's that for sitting on the fence?
There you go.
That's
There you
sitting
go.
on the fence for sure.
Crack, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, I look at this game and I know for the 49ers, it's tough because they've been so inconsistent. You're not sure exactly what team you're gonna get. But I do know one thing. More times than not, when Kyle Shanahan plays against one of his proteges, right? One of those coaches from his coaching tree, he usually kind of kicks their butt. He usually does very well. I think the first time he lost to one of them was to LaFleur this year, and that was when, Aaron Rodgers drove down the field with 37 seconds left and no timeouts. So I'm not confident with this, but I'm going to take the Niners on the road, but solely because of his track record against coaches that he's very familiar with.
Yeah, I'm taking the Niners too for a couple of reasons. One, the Bengals are still banged up. T. Higgins as well. We'll see. And even if all these guys play and come back, Burrow isn't going to be 100%, right? T. Higgins isn't going to be 100%. The tackles, Trey Hopkins and Riley Reif not going to be 100%. So that's part of it. The other part of it is this team needs to show it can win games like this that are super physical and that are, this Kyle Shanahan scheme. And we just talked about the Trey Hendrickson part of it. He should line up on the right side, right? And if they're not willing to do that, then that's going to be really hard to overcome. And just little things like that I think when you combine Jamar Chase's recent struggles, it's hard. So is there a path for the Bengals to win? Absolutely. And Bengals fans, don't fret. We'll talk about those on our preview show, but I'll take the 49ers by 30-27.
Everybody that listens to Locked On Bengals knows that I graciously decline to predict.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a loser.
Right? Imagine not predicting football games because we're so good at that as football analysts, right? Like we're just really good at picking winners. What's your record, James?
It doesn't matter. At least I do it. Like that's which way are you leaning? It's Wednesday night. Which way would you lean?
I'm pretty worried about the state of injuries for the Bengals right now. I can definitely see a path to both teams winning. It's a little early in the week for me to really have a strong feeling. I'm feeling a lot like I did going into the Chargers game where I could see it going either way. So as non-committal as Brian, but people that listen to the Locked On Bengals podcast do know that I'll say if I'm feeling good about a game. I don't know that I'm feeling good or bad about this game, but there's a lot of history that scares me. And Trent Williams, like how much can a left tackle individually win you a football game? That's what I'm wondering right now. And that's what scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I've
He's
talked
good.
about on
Whatever
the
you think
podcast
of Trent Williams in your head, whatever you think about him in your head, he's probably like 10 times better than that.
Yeah, I
He's
know.
really
Yeah,
good.
sometimes better than that. Yeah, just line up Kittle to the left of Trent Williams, run left all day long. I don't know why the 49ers don't just stop screwing around with the right side. Just go left all day, because those two guys can just destroy people. And their wide receivers have been blocking pretty well this year too. I've loved seeing that. I think that's part of the reason why Ayuk might have been in the doghouse a little bit for Kyle Shanahan to start the season. I will note that this is also a West Coast start time. So body clocks, this does help the 49ers, even though they're on the road.
No, they've changed it.
What?
They changed it to 4 from 1. They flexed it to 4 o'clock to accommodate the traveling San Francisco 49ers, which is really like, come on, what are we doing here? It's a
No, I
Bengals home
think
game.
they tried to put it at more of a primetime time. I
Yeah.
think that's what they tried to do.
I know.
Yeah.
I just like to complain about it.
Yeah.
By the way, I was on Trent Williams Island last year before he got traded to San Francisco. I said that oh man, what you guys ripped off Washington. I don't know what the heck was going on
I think
there.
that was all Trent, because from what I understand, the Vikings had a deal in place and Trent Williams would have had to do a new deal and he didn't want to. So the Vikings backed out. So basically Trent Williams flexed because he was going to walk. So he didn't. So the Niners were okay trading for a guy who was going to go into a walk year and still give up something for him.
Yeah.
And the other teams weren't. So I think that's why it ended up being the 49ers. And I think that's what Trent wanted, to go back and play for Kyle Shanahan anyway. So he kind of got his wish there. So I don't know if the Bengals even could have done it.
Yeah, but probably not. But the point is he's still amazing. And you got him for,
Yes.
the 49ers got him for a second and a fifth. Like they stole him. Wasn't it a second and a fifth or something?
No, it was less than that. It was
Less than that. Oh man.
I think it was a fourth. And Croc, what was it? I can't remember now.
Third and a fifth.
It was a steal,
Maybe.
whatever. Third and a fifth, is
Yeah.
that what it was?
It was something like that. Whatever it was
fifth.
at the time.
It was a fifth that year and a third the following year.
Yep, that's what it was. Okay.
There we go.
Anyways.
We figured it out. We got to the bottom of it just in
And that's
time to
Jake
wrap
Liscow's-
up.
Did it. All right.
Jake
yeah.
Liscow's biggest fear in Sunday's game is this third and fifth round
Terrifying.
pick guy.
If you had to line up and go against an NFL player, would Trent Williams be the last on your list of players you'd have to face?
Aaron Donald will be there too, right? Like some of these defensive guys, but he's near the bottom for sure if he's not at the very bottom.
Yeah, with Aaron Donald, he would just get by you so fast, it wouldn't hurt you as much as a pancake from Trent Williams.
If Aaron Donald saw me in front of him, he would just
He'd go
run right
bullish.
through me and trample me, and I would be in the hospital.
Croc, which wide receiver in the NFL could you lock up right now today?
Pretty much all of them.
Sounds
You
like a
gotta have
cornerback,
confidence. That's
man.
the confidence of a defensive back
Yeah.
right there. Just
That
don't
is.
throw it. Just don't throw it at Crocker, because you know he's not going to catch it, because DB's got no hands and can't catch. That's why they play defense. All right. Good stuff, guys. We went really long here, but it was a fun conversation talking Niners and Bengals. I'm excited to see this Week 14 matchup in Cincinnati. Thanks to all the listeners out there. You can find James at James Rapien on Twitter. You can find Jake at Jake Liscow. I'm at BD Peacock. Eric at Eric_Crocker. Thanks for making Locked On 49ers and Locked On Bengals your first listen every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.